Chapter 12. That's the plan, Kip Dalton said. They had drawn up in the middle of a meadow, and all had gathered around the wagon to discuss Kip's plan. Kitty had not liked the plan from the beginning. She had been riding side by side with Kip all afternoon. They had both been silent for most of the trip. Obviously, they both were engrossed with thoughts of what to do. So far, the gang had just been traveling aimlessly, wandering in various directions with the sole purpose of putting as much distance behind them as possible and also leaving a confusing trail behind them. When the silence had finally broken, it was Kip who offered a plan of action. "What we're doing is getting us nowhere, Kitty," he said. "I think the best thing for you to do is hide out at my place for a while until we find out what Price is up to with this counterfeit silver. Once we find that out, maybe we can beat him at his own game. We know he wants to find you, and we know he wants this phony stuff. We've got to hide you, and it too. The best place would be my place. You could hide the wagon in my barn." "That would be awfully dangerous," Kitty said. "For you as well as for us. What if they already suspect you're in with us? You may have been identified back there at the mine." "I don't think so, but I'm going to test that out by going back to Thimble Creek." "Why? Why would you do that? You'd be running an awful risk," Kitty protested. "I don't think so. The only one at the mine who could have gotten a look at me was Peso Martin, but I think it was too dark and I was too far away for him to see me. If I'm wrong, they'll come looking for you at my place, so don't get there until you're sure I'm there and alone. Don't come in unless I let you know it's safe." "And what are you going to be doing in town?" Kitty asked. "I'll be nosing around to see if I can find out what Price is up to with that phony silver." Kitty laughed. "You just going to walk up to Price and say, 'Simple Simon, sir, what are you going to do with a wagon load of counterfeit silver?' Go ahead and scoff if you like, milady, but there's more than one way to skin a cat." "Meaning?" "Meaning, I do believe Mr. Price has a girlfriend in town." "Oh yes," Kitty said with a knowing scowl. "Flo Baxter, I believe you did say you met her, didn't you? You were quite taken with her, weren't you? Took her to lunch." She shifted in the saddle and tossed her hair a bit haughtily. "Now, Kitty," Kip began to protest, "you know it wasn't quite like that, and I believe it was her that was taken with me." "Same thing," Kitty snapped. "Don't let it go to your head, soldier boy. She's taken with any pair of pants. You just happen to have extra wide yellow stripes down the sides of your pant legs." She stared straight ahead, guiding her pinto. "I know that," Kip said plaintively. "So I figure she's both Peso's and Simon's girl." "She's everybody's girl," Kitty interrupted. "Yes," Kip acquiesced with annoyance and a sigh. "So she just might have heard something. Know something. If not, maybe I can find out something some other way." Kitty just shrugged and looked away from him. She became silent. Aware of the tension between them, Cyclone felt the uneasiness and found it necessary to break the silence. "So we'll meet you at your place tomorrow night after dark," Cyclone said to Kip, trying to ignore Kitty's fit of jealousy and draw Kip's attention away from it. "It'll take you most of the day tomorrow to make it to my place with the wagon, but you should make it well before sundown. Make sure it is dark when you start in, and don't come in until I let you know it's safe." "We'll be finding a place on the trail to camp out for tonight," Jeremy said. "And I suppose you'll be staying in town tonight then?" It was more of a question than a statement. "Yes, he is," Kitty said, spacing each word out firmly and distinctly. Her arms were folded across her chest, and her eyes held a tinge of anger. Kip took a deep breath and looked reproachfully at Kitty. "Well, if I'm going to make Thimble Creek before dark, I better get started." He lifted Saber's reins, twisted his neck, spurring inside his flanks to turn him in a tight circle. He tipped the brim of his hat and said, "Wish me Lou." He glanced at Kitty and cut it off. "Never mind," he said. He spurred the great black stallion into a gallop and rode off to the south. Kip Dalton had been gone less than an hour when it happened. The riders came out of the northwest behind them. There were 9 of them. They had spread out, spaced evenly apart, riding side by side, filling almost the entire width of the meadow. Their horses were galloping at full speed, their iron-shod hooves churning up clods of turf and spewing them helter-skelter in the wake of each horse's stride. The riders had their pistols out, and as they came within range, the valley filled with the thunder of gunfire. The Wildcats were taken with complete surprise when the riders seemed to appear as if by magic, rising out of the horizon behind them. With the first volley, spurs went to the sides of horses, whip and leathers snapped the wagon team horses, and all shot forward with sudden speed. Lead pellets were flying around the Wildcats' heads, and a few thudded into the rambling wagon. As they instinctively rode away from their pursuers, the riders immediately had their weapons out and were firing back behind them as they fled. They were putting distance between themselves and the attackers, but Jeremy and the wagon were falling behind. Kitty and Cyclone pulled back, slowing their mounts, still firing at their pursuers, and motioned to Jeremy to circle into a cluster of rocks off to the right. He nodded and pulled hard on the leathers. The team turned sharply across and in front of Cyclone and Kitty. Rapp rode up where the wagon had just been, rifle in hand. He fired at the pack of raiders. One rider fell from the saddle. Rapp levered another round and fired again. Another rider slouched in the saddle, dropping his gun and letting his arm drape uselessly downward. The attackers slowed their pace, pulled back a bit. Frankie and his friends kept firepower going as they all rode into the rocks behind Jeremy, the wagon, Cyclone, and Kitty. Rapp and Chief held cover and followed in behind. The raiders were just about to pull up and look for cover also, when riders appeared on the ridge to the left. There were 4 of them. They had rifles out and were opening fire on them. Right out of the chute, 2 of the attacking men fell from the saddle. 2 more took a hit and slouched in their saddles. One fell out and, dragging a bleeding leg, tried to climb back on his horse. The Wildcats were still firing from their hiding place, and another man fell from his horse, a big red blotch on his chest. With firing coming from 2 directions, and with as many casualties, the attackers gathered up what wounded or dead they could and hightailed it back the way they came. They did, however, leave 2 of their dead behind. It was over as quickly as it had begun. The thunder of guns was no longer, and silence had returned to the valley. The Wildcats watched the 4 riders on the ridge ride slowly down into the valley. There seemed to be something familiar about these men, but at the distance it was impossible to identify them. It took the 4 riders a while to reach the floor of the valley. By that time, Cyclone had decided that the attackers probably had gone for good and would not be back. It would probably be safe enough to venture out and meet these men who had saved their lives. Nodding to the others, he led out. "Well, I'll be hornswoggled," Cyclone said as they all met up. "The Beatty Boys! What in tarnation are you boys doing in these parts?" He sat his horse, keeping both hands on the pommel, and didn't bother to offer his hand to shake. "I might say the same to you," Red Beatty said, forcing an oily smile. Then, thinking the better of it and thinking it wise to offer an explanation, he said, "We was just riding through and saw this ruckus and thought we'd take a hand." "How'd you know what side to take?" Cyclone asked. "Not that I'm complaining a mite, mind you. Just wondering." "Just took one. Your lucky day, I guess." Then, looking over the young boys, "Looks like your gang's grown a bit since last we met." "Yeah," Cyclone said. "These here are Bud Geary, Pete Garvey, Garth Pearson, and the mean one there is Frankie the Kid." He pointed to each one in turn. They each nodded back. "Frankie the Kid," Red Beatty said. "You gotta be kiddin'. Whoever heard of Frankie the Kid?" "Maybe you want to hear about him right now," Rapp said, sidling his big gray over next to Red. "Frankie," Rapp said, turning to the Kid. "This here blowhard is Red Beatty. These are his brothers, Kirby, Jonas, and Willis. Willis is all right, but these other 3, keep an eye on 'em." Now rap, Cyclone urged. That's no way to treat these fine fellas that done saved our hides here today. Then to Red, sorry about Rap, Red. He ain't got the brains the good Lord give a rattler. Aw, Cy, don't say that. I have to. You're right, Rap, Cyclone conceded. You do. Gee, thanks, Cy. So who were these guys that were after you, Cyclone? The law? Red asked. I don't think so, Cyclone said. They left a couple of their dead behind. Let's go take a look. They all lifted their reins and turned their horses to ride out to the bodies. Before going, Red nodded to Kirby. Kirby lagged back and sidled up alongside the wagon, pulled back the front corner of the canvas. Jeremy, still on the driver's seat, sensed him back there and whirled around quickly just as Kirby tossed the canvas back in place. What are you doing back there? Jeremy snapped. Nothing, Kirby answered surlily, spurred his horse and rode off after the others. By the time Kirby caught up with the others, they had all dismounted and had turned over the first body. Zeke Masters, Jonas Beatty said. He's a bounty hunter. Is there a bounty on you guys, Cy? Red asked as if the thought was incredulous. Let's see who this other one is, Cyclone said without answering the question. He strode over to the other body. Kirby came up behind Red and whispered something in his ear. The other man was flat on his back. His blank eyes stared straight up. That's Luke Summers, Rap said. He's a bounty hunter, too. Then there is a bounty on you, Red persisted. Yeah, Rap said. Simon Price put it on all of us. Bounty hunters are all over the place. Rap, will you just shut up? Cyclone shouted. His face turned white with anger. I don't know how much I'm worth, but Cy says I'm not worth a hill of beans. I don't know who'd come after me for a hill of beans, though. Cyclone whipped his big hat off head and slapped it back and forth across Rap's face twice. I told you to shut up, you big idiot. Now get away from me and get out of my sight. Rap's angular face drooped long. A sadness crept over his eyes, and he said, Cy, are you mad at me? Cyclone checked his anger, gazed into those soulful little boy eyes, and sighed. Nah, Rap, I was just playing with ya. Cyclone turned back to Red Beatty. I guess the cat's out of the bag now. You see, there's this big high muckety-muck named Simon Price who doesn't like Kitty and me much. He's brought in bounty hunters to do away with us. We had a run-in with them a couple of times already, and I guess that was a bunch of them here today. We must be whittling them down a mite by now, or at least discouraging them some. Well, I'm glad we came along when we did, and were able to help out, Red said. We sure do appreciate it, and we're mighty beholden to you. I just hope we haven't held you fellas up from going where you was going. We were just drifting anyhow. Really weren't going any place in particular. You know we could stick around with you for a while, just in case more bounty hunters get on your tail. We couldn't ask you to do that. Besides, we've got a place to hole up in for a while, Cyclone said. But you need to get there first, Red said. Let us tag along until you're safe, then we'll move on. How's that? Cyclone thought about it for a while. The Beatties were never this nice. He smiled broadly and offered his hand to Red. Thank you ever so much, my friend. Flo Baxter sat on the cushion in front of her dressing table and mirror. She loved her mirror. It was high and oval and had silver-plated ornamentation framing it. It always seemed to enhance her image, which to her was just as youthful and radiant as it had been 20 years ago when she was the belle of every young man's fancy in Virginia. She brushed lovingly as the golden locks of curls that she told herself was just as full of body and sheen as when she had been a girl. The mirror was not full length, so she did not have to deal with the expanding waist and hips. When she would pull away from the mirror, she would absently just tuck at her middle and pull her skirts down around her hips, which was what she did now at the light tapping sound of a knock on her hotel door. She was always well-dressed, and tonight was no exception with a tight-fitting pink gown, plunging neckline, expensive pearl necklace, and a ruby ring. She pulled the door open and beamed with effervescent surprise. With one hand to her breast as if in shocked surprise, and one hand extended limply to receive a gallant caress, she said in the most lilting of voices, "Why, Mr. Dalton, or should I say Kip," she gushed. "This is a surprise. And to what do I owe this most delicious evening visit?" Kip Dalton was standing in the doorway, lounging against the door jamb. He had a champagne bottle under his left arm and 2 champagne glasses in his left hand. On seeing her in the doorway, he quickly slipped out of his slouch and snapped to attention. He bowed, took her offered hand, and kissed it. Then he transferred the champagne bottle to his right hand, held up the glasses in the other hand, and tinkled them back and forth. "I come forth bearing gifts, m'lady." He grinned broadly with a devilish glint in his eye. He stepped over the threshold. Chapter 13. "What are we waiting for now?" Jonas asked. "There's probably no more bounty hunters to compete with now." They were hunched down in their own portion of the camp. When darkness came and it came time to find cover and make camp for the night, the Beaties had made their own little camp a short distance away from the Wildcats. There's still too many of them for the 4 of us, especially since they picked up those other 4. Besides, I've got my sights on bigger game than bounty. "What are you talking about?" "Tell him Kirby," Red said, "but keep it quiet." Kirby laughed. "You know what they got in that wagon?" He didn't wait for an answer. He was too excited. "Silver," he giggled. "A wagon full of silver." He nodded the point of his chin at it. "Just a few feet away from us. I ain't gonna be able to sleep all night." "Well, you'd better," Red said, "'cause when we get the chance, you'd better be ready." Then, looking past Jonas's shoulder, he lowered his voice. "Can it now? Here comes the girl." Kitty ambled over to where the 4 Beady boys were sitting. "You fellows don't have to sit all the way over here by yourselves," she said congenially. "You're welcome to join us. We figured that if anyone was about to attack you and the others, it would be best if we were a ways away where we wouldn't be in the initial line of fire and we would be able to fight back for you. Splitting our defenses, you might say. It's sort of a military tactic," Red said, trying to exude an air of confidence and credibility. Somehow it just didn't seem to ring true. Kitty cocked her head to the side thoughtfully. "I guess that kind of makes sense." She seemed to agree, but didn't quite understand. Then she turned her attention to Willis, who had just been sitting quietly and unresponsive. He hadn't looked up at Kitty since she approached. "You've been awfully quiet since we met up today, Willis," she said. "Aren't you glad to see me?" "Sure," Willis answered curtly, glancing up briefly and looking back down at the ground again. "I hope we're still friends," Kitty said, clearly sensing that something was wrong. "I'm probably too young to be your friend," Willis said, glaring up at her and fixing a stare. "Friends can be any age, Willis," Kitty tried to explain. "It's all right for guys to be older than girls, but not for girls to be older than guys. Isn't that right?" "No, it's not. It can be both ways." "But you like an older man, don't you?" He got up and stomped off into the dark. "What is wrong with him?" Kitty said, watching him go. "Growing pains," Red said with a half grin. "Britches getting too tight for him, if you know what I mean." He winked at Kitty slyly. "I most certainly don't," Kitty snapped with disdain. She wheeled on her heel and strode back to the side of the camp with her own people. Arapaho Brown and Chief Henry were sharing the same tree trunk for a backrest, sitting at right angles to each other. Rap had just taken a swig from his flask and had exaggerated his relish for Chief's benefit. "Mighty good firewater," Rap said. "Too bad it's agin the law to give firewater to an Injun. Sure wish I could share some with you." "How many times are you going to play this game with me, Rap? You know I'm a fake Indian. There's no law against giving me a drink." "Then if I ain't breaking no law, where's the fun in giving you a drink?" "No, sir, I can't give you no drink." It's just too bad you're just a fake Injun. You know, Rap, Chief said, you're just too logical. He snatched the flask out of Rap's hand, took 2 deep swallows, and handed it back. Rap looked stunned. Chief stood up and brushed himself off. I'm going over to see what Cy and Jeremy are up to. He walked away. Kitty approached as Chief left. You two been at it again? She said as she sat down at the tree where Chief had just been. Yep, Rap smiled as he stoppered his flask and put it away. I guess Chief is the best friend I ever had. That is, except for you, Cy, and Jeremy. But you and Chief are always going at it all the time, Kitty said. We both know we're just funnin', but we're like brothers. Did you ever have any brothers, Rap? Kitty asked. For the first time, she wondered why she had never bothered to ask. Yeah, I had a brother. He was younger than me. I liked him a lot. Rap's eyes saddened, and his face lengthened. Kitty wasn't sure if she should pursue the conversation. She remained silent. After a moment, Rap continued. I don't rightly remember his name, though. I mean his real name. Hell, I don't even remember my own real name. Oh, Kitty said. I never thought about you having a name other than Arapaho. I should have. I assumed you got it because of some association with the Indian tribe. Nah, it was nothing like that at all. You see, my pappy died when me and my brother were both little, and my ma married a real sumbitch of a low-down skunk. When I got older, I found out that my real pappy didn't just die, but this skunk had shot him. Anyways, he treated us real bad. My ma was a good ma, and I remember her hugging me and how warm she was, but she died too, and left us all alone with this nasty man. He was always yelling at me and telling me he'd wrap a hoe around my neck. Well, when I finally lit out on my own, I took the name of Arapaho, 'cause I darn sure didn't like the one the old man gave me. What did he call you? Kitty asked. He called me Pig Swill, and my brother Dog Crap. We got so used to it, we didn't know we had any other names. One day he says to me, Hey Dog Crap, get in here. And I says back to him, Hey Dad, I'm not Dog Crap, I'm Pig Swill. So, when did you leave? Kitty asked. Rap seemed to be gazing far off before he said it. I don't know how old I was. 7, 8, 9. Hell, I don't even know how old I am now. But I left right after my brother died. Kitty refrained from asking. After a moment, Rap continued. One night, it was my brother's turn to stoke the fire in the fireplace. He didn't wake up in time, and the fire was burning low. The place was getting chilly. The old man woke up while my brother was still trying to bring the fire up. He was mad as hell, and took the hot poker to my brother and beat him to death. My brother screamed something fierce. I just couldn't stand it no more. The dirty old man turned to me and said, He was just a piece of dog crap anyways. I ran to the old man's bed where his gun belt was hanging on the post and pulled that big pistol out of it. I held it with both hands, pointing it at the old man, and pulled the hammer back. He just laughed at me and called me dog crap too. I shot the bastard right then and there. Boy, did that feel good? I shot him 5 more times. He fell back into the fire. I rode away and everything burned behind me. Oh, Rap, Kitty said softly. But now I got me an honest-to-gosh family, by golly, he said, hiding a lump in his throat. He took out his flask, unstoppered it, and took a swallow. Just one swallow. Then covered it again and put the flask away. Chief hunkered down next to Cyclone and Jeremy where they were sitting on the wagon tongue. Don't you think it a little peculiar that those fellows showed up so coincidentally today, Cy? He said. The thought has kind of crossed my mind a time or two, Cyclone chuckled. You think they've been following us all along? Don't seem likely, Cyclone said. Can't see no reason for it. Maybe they're after the bounty too. I don't know how they would have known about that and followed us all the way down here. Besides, I don't think they got enough gumption to try to take us on. They're too sniveling for that. Then just what do you think they're up to? I don't know. Something. Maybe nothing. but I think we'll soon find out." "Is that what you're keeping those fellows around for, Cy?" Chief asked. "You know the old saying about keeping your friends close and your enemies closer?" "What do you think they are hanging around for?" Chief asked. "Jeremy says they've been sniffing around the wagon," Cyclone said. "They think we've got a load of silver and they're probably looking for a chance to get it away from us," Jeremy put in. "Wouldn't they be surprised if they knew for sure just what we got?" Chief chuckled. "In the meantime," Cyclone said, "maybe we can use them if we get any more grief from them bounty hunters or Price's men. We'll just play along for a while and see what happens." "All right, Cy," Chief said, standing up. "I sure hope you know what you're doing." "Me too, Henry," Cyclone said, as his friend walked away back to the tree where he had been sitting with Rap. Kitty saw him returning and decided she had stayed long enough. "Talk to you later, Rap," she said, as she stood and started to walk away. "Always good to talk with you, honey," he said with a smile. She greeted Chief as they passed each other. "Hi, Grandpa," she said as she approached her grandfather and brother. Both of them could detect the sadness in Kitty's tone. Jeremy sensed this was a time that Kitty might need the shoulder of her grandpa. He said, "Hi, Kit. I was just going to check on the horses. I'll be right back in a flash." He jumped up and scooted off into the darkness. Kitty sat down on the ground next to the wagon tongue. She didn't say anything to start conversation. "Something bothering you, babe?" Cyclone asked. "You're looking mighty down in the mouth." "I was just talking to Rap. He was telling me about his childhood." "Don't fret about Rap. He don't carry it with him none." "He did just now." "That was just for you, girl. He thinks a mighty lot of you. He wouldn't have shared it with anybody else. He's already chucked it away again by now. And there's that Willis Beatty boy. Grandpa, he acts so strange toward me, like I've done something wrong to him." "Well, the Beatty boys are a strange lot anyways. Don't let them get you down. Now, do you want to tell your old grandpa just what is really bothering you? Do you think he had anything to do with those bounty hunters coming down on us today? I mean, he just left us not long before they hit us?" "Who? You mean that Kip Dalton fella?" "Shucks, no." "You mean that?" Kitty stared up into his old eyes. "Course I do. For one thing, they came from the opposite direction from the way he went. He didn't have time to let anyone know where we were. And ain't he been helping us right along?" "Then you do like him and trust him, Grandpa?" Kitty's face brightened. "I'm not saying I like him. Besides, I still think he's too old and slick for you. As for trusting him, you know I don't trust nobody 'cept in my own. Now, Grandpa, and I don't think you was worried about him betraying us this afternoon, nuther. I think you're worried about him betraying you tonight. You're worried about him and that Baxter floozy." "I am not. He's too refined to fall for an old hag like her." "Then why are you getting so mad?" Cyclone asked. "I'm not getting mad," Kitty protested. "Not to change the subject," Cyclone said with a wry grin, "but I haven't heard you mention Matt Starr lately." "Oh, Grandpa, you know it's impossible for me and Matt. Besides, we haven't seen each other in months. He's probably found somebody else by now." "And now, you think you've found somebody else too?" Cyclone added. "At least he's not someone who's about to arrest me and put me in jail. Besides, Kip's not like Matt. He's a gentleman. He's dignified, refined, and elegant, like fine china. Fine china is great to look at, and for special occasions, but you don't usually put it out for everyday use," Cyclone said. "So you're saying you don't approve of Kip?" Kitty said. "I didn't say that." "Then are you saying you approve of Matt?" "I didn't say that, nuther." "Well, just what are you saying? Aren't you ever going to approve of anybody I choose?" "Well, girl," Cyclone said, "the way I see it, you got one whale of a job ahead of you, and it ain't gonna be easy. You're gonna have to find yourself a fella just like your old grandpa." Kitty laughed. "Oh, sure, a grizzled, dried-up, cantankerous old man." "Well, you know, I wasn't always like this. There were some who considered me quite handsome and dashing." "You been reading those dime novels they write about you again?" Kitty chided. "Well now, not everything in them is all made up, you know. I'll have you know, your grandma thought I was pretty sporty." There was a glint in his eye as he mentioned her. "I'm sure she did, Grandpa. Now there was a woman who wouldn't accept less than me, which means she had to have everything. And a man shouldn't accept a woman who doesn't think enough of herself to demand everything, that is, as long as she appreciates what her man does for her. That's the kind of woman you should be, and that's the kind of man you'll get." "I wish I had known Grandma," Kitty said. "You do know her," Cyclone said. "You're a lot like her, and you are part of her in the here and now. I wish I had understood that when I lost her. I thought we had everything, but you can't let everything be everything. I rode away and left your pa and ma. I missed out on seeing you and Jeremy grow up. I know now that your grandma wouldn't have wanted that for me or for you. Somehow I think she had a hand in sending you to find me before I finished the trail." "The trail?" Kitty said. "You know, the here and now. It's just a trail through a pass between where we come from and where we're going. We all have to get through the pass somehow. Some get through quicker than others. Some get through easier, but we all gotta get through. It sure helps to have someone to help you along the way." He reached his big arms around Kitty's shoulders and squeezed tight, like he never wanted to let her go. Chapter 14. "You told me that yesterday?" Simon Price blustered. His voice was still raspy from the other night. His throat was still sore. "Yes, but my men retrieved the bars from the river, and the Wildcat stole the load again before I got back to the mine." Conrad Price whined. "So you're telling me we don't have a shipment for next week?" Simon was pacing around his small office at the rear of his bank. Conrad was standing in front of his father's desk, and Flo Baxter was lounging in the big leather chair in the corner. She would have looked bored had she not been just a bit amused with Conrad's discomfort. That's about it, Pa," Conrad said meekly. His hat was in his hand. "Well, what are you doing about it?" Price chided. He rubbed the bald spot on the back of his head. "Do? You mean get it back?" "No, you nitwit. Don't you have enough silver to make up another shipment?" "Oh, yeah, I guess we could do that," Conrad said. "We don't have much, though. I'm not sure we got enough." "Then melt down a few ingots of the real stuff from last month. That will be faster anyways." "Oh, right, Pennsylvania. That's good thinking. Why didn't I think of that?" "Exactly," Simon fumed, glaring at his son and wishing he had someone else's. Conrad continued to stand there silently for no apparent reason until Simon blustered again. "Well, what are you waiting for? Get out of here and get to work." "Why, yes, sir," Conrad said and hurried nervously out the door. Simon pursed his lips angrily as he watched his son go. His eyes wandered to the corner where Flo was sitting. He thought he saw a slight hint of amusement in her expression, though she was trying to hide it. "What the hell were you doing all night?" he barked angrily. "You look like hell." It was mid-morning, and the sun was halfway to its apex. It was promising to be another warm day, although not the usual scorcher of the past several days. The caravan of riders and wagon had been on the trail for 2 hours. So far, the trip had been uneventful. The Beatties had taken up a position at the rear of the formation as rear guard in case of attack. They would keep watch of the back trail, and in case of any sightings of trouble, they could create a buffer. "Sure do make a fella feel mighty safe having such a fine bunch of protectors covering our backs," Rap Brown said to Cyclone as they rode side by side next to Jeremy on the wagon seat. "Just makes me wonder when they're going to get around to shooting us in the back." "Oh, they'll get to it all right, but right now there's too danged many of us." Cyclone grinned. Out of the corner of his eye, Cyclone saw Red Beatty pull his horse out of formation and gig forward at a gallop, racing forward to come up alongside Cyclone and Rap. "Get ready, I think they're getting ready to make a move now," Cyclone warned. Cyclone! Red shouted excitedly as he pulled his horse up alongside to a walk. The boys spotted some dust trails a ways back. I saw them too. Looks like riders. Several of them. Maybe me and the boys ought to ride back and check them out. We'd surely appreciate that, Red, Cyclone said gratefully, keeping his suspicions to himself. Good. Then we'll do it, Red said. Then, as if as an afterthought and eyeing Rap, he said, maybe we should take one of your men with us in case there is trouble and there is too much for us to handle. That's good thinking, Red, Cy said, without indicating a hint of distrust. Whatever they were up to, they wanted to get Rap out of the way. Then to Rap, he said, with a wink of an eye, Rap, you'd better go with them and give them a hand. Will do, Cy, Rap said, pulling the reins back to fall behind Cyclone so he could neck rein the big gray around and ride back with Red Beatty. They picked up the remaining 3 Beatty brothers, and they all rode off, disappearing beyond the far horizon. 10 minutes later, Willis Beatty came riding back at a furious gallop. He was lashing his mount frantically with the reins and spurring him hard, pushing him to the limit of his endurance. He was shouting as he approached, and the closer he came, the more his words could be understood. Bounty hunters, he shouted. Bounty hunters hit us. They got Rap. My brothers are pinned down. They need help. He slewed his horse to a halt, spinning around in the trail, readying to turn back. We gotta go help him. Kitty turned a quick glance to Cyclone for approval. Everyone, Cyclone shouted, go get him. Kitty, Chief, Frankie and his friends all kicked their mounts into motion and took off with Willis and were gone in a cloud of dust. Cyclone was still sitting his horse next to Jeremy on the wagon and watching them go. You're not going with them, Grandpa? Jeremy asked. That's not like you. Aren't you worried? If you're concerned about this wagon, it's not worth it. Just hang on there, boy. We're just about to find out what goes on here. He slid his rifle out of its boot, levered a shell into the chamber, and held it across his chest with his finger on the trigger. A moment later, 4 riders rode out of the trees off to the right. Red and Kirby Beatty were the outside flank riders. In the center, Jonas Beatty lead the big gray horse of the 4th rider, Rap Brown. His hands were tied behind him, and Jonas Beatty had the barrel of his pistol pressed against the back of Rap's head just below the left ear. Cyclone lowered the barrel of his rifle and held it steady. The Beattys halted in the open field. Well, this is a little embarrassing, Cyclone. I thought you would have been gone off to do your usual daring do. You don't think I would have gone off to save a bunch of skunks like you, do you? I thought you would have wanted to save your friend here, Red chided. Rap can always take care of himself, Cyclone said. Besides, I knew you was just drawing everybody away, just to get this wagon. So I waited for you. You'd better take it fast before everybody finds out it was just a trick and gets back here. If they do, Red said, I've got you, your boy, and your friend here. If we don't get the wagon, they won't get you. I'm afraid nobody's getting the Cyclone kid but me, a voice boomed from behind the Beatty brothers. Red started to turn, but the voice sounded again. It was a harsh voice. It sounded ominous and deep, but somehow not quite Manish. Don't turn around. Don't anyone turn around. All of you drop your guns. Toss them as far out in front of your horses so I can see where they land. Who's back there? Red asked nervously. Never mind, the voice said. Just do as I said, or you won't even feel hitting the ground. Now do it. Reluctantly, all 3 tossed their guns away. The same goes for you too, Cyclone, the voice ordered. And that snot-nosed kid on that wagon seat? Nobody holds a gun but me. Got that? A figure covered by a long trail duster and large brim hat carrying a shotgun and riding a dapple gray mare rode out into the open. A squat, broad-shouldered young man with long blonde hair hanging shoulder-length beneath a beaten straw hat, riding a mule, followed close behind. Cyclone's eyes squinted in disbelief. Out of the frying pan into the fire, he groaned. He sighed and pursed his lips in defeat. "Toss your gun away, boy," he said to Jeremy. He threw his rifle down, drew his pistol, and tossed it away. "After all this time, Sam Bell has finally caught up with me." "Who's Sam Bell?" Jeremy asked. "Bounty hunter," Cyclone said in a low voice. "Been after me for a long time." "Now, you three Jaspers," the bounty hunter said. "Kick them animals into a run and get as far away from here as you get before I blast you all to kingdom come. Leave that other varmint here. He's mine for the time being. Now get!" One barrel of the shotgun went off, and a hailstorm of pellets flew in a cloud over the Beatty brothers' heads. They took off at gallop without looking back. They disappeared immediately. Raps's horse stamped nervously and shied away. "Con Cyclone, let's get going." Cyclone gigged his horse forward. Jeremy said after him, "Just like that, Grandpa? You're giving up just like that? Why did you throw your guns away so easily?" "Had to, son," Cyclone said as he rode on to meet the other two riders. "There's just no way I could shoot Sam Bell." "As for you, Sonny," Sam Bell said, "tell your friends that if any of you come after us in the next hour, the old man is dead." They all rode off to the north, each rider flanking Cyclone on each side. In a moment or two, they were gone over the horizon. "You mean there really were bounty hunter after all?" Frankie the Kid said after the riders had returned, and Jeremy told what had happened. "Not the ones you thought you were after," Jeremy said. "That was just a ploy by Willis and his brothers to get you away from the wagon." Willis shifted nervously on his feet. His brothers had used him. The plan had blown up, and he had been left holding the bag. His brothers were gone. For the first time, he realized that if the plan had succeeded, he would still be in the same position he was in right now. He was afraid of what was going to happen to him. "It wasn't my idea," Willis blurted. "They're my brothers. They told me to do it. What else could I do?" "No, this was another bounty hunter, working separately," Jeremy continued, ignoring Willis's blubbering. "This one was named Sam Bell." "Sam Bell!" Kitty exclaimed. "Grandpa mentioned a Sam Bell but refused to say anything about him." "Him," Jeremy said. "Sam Bell's not a him. Sam Bell's a woman." Chapter 15. They rode silently at first. It was Cyclone who broke the silence. "You've grown some, Dub," Cyclone said to the boy riding to his left. He was old enough to be a man, but he still looked boyish. His body was plump. His face was round, and he still had freckles. Two of his upper teeth were missing on the left side. Spittle drooled off the left side of his thick lips. His eyes drifted apart, and it was obvious that he wasn't mentally adult. "Never mind the boy, Cy. Just worry about your own self. I'm taking you in." "Sam, you know that wanted poster probably ain't no good no more," Cyclone said. "It's been a good many years now, and all that's forgotten. Besides, Joe was robbing a bank at the time, and he was shooting at me. He didn't give me much choice. Just the same, he was my husband, and you shot him. You gotta pay for that, and I mean to collect." "You can't just put a reward poster out for something like that," Cyclone said. "I didn't. But your brother-in-law did. Same thing. Just 'cause he was sheriff of the county, which I don't think he ain't anymore," Cyclone said. "Don't make no difference," Sam said. "I still got the paper." The trail was narrowing down by now into a pass walled on both sides by shale outcroppings. As I recollect, the reward was what? $4,000? "4," she clarified. "Well, you know, Sam," Cyclone said, "there's a fella in Thimble Creek. That's not too far from here. He's willing to pay $10,000 for me. You'll make heaps sight more dough and save you a lot of trouble if you just dump me off there." "Doesn't interest me," Sam Bell said. "I'm still taking you back to Utah." "That's what I figured," Cyclone groaned. They had just rounded a bend in the trail. There was a crevice in the shale wall. "In there, Dub," Sam said. Follow the trail up." The boy turned the mule into the opening and prodded her with his heels. The shale and sandstone slipped beneath the mule's hoofs on the sharply inclined trail. Sam flourished her pistol at Cyclone. "You next." That crevice is hardly wide enough for the boy and the mule to get through, much less his horse as big as mine and me, a fat old man besides. "You still look fit as a fiddle to me," Sam said, lifting the pistol a little higher and giving Cy a little poke in the belly with the muzzle. "You always was a fine-looking man, Cyclone." She drew the pistol away and flourished again. "Now get after the boy." "Yes, ma'am," Cyclone said. He eyed the pistol warily and then nodded his acquiescence. Cyclone urged his chestnut mare into the crevice. It was dark inside, but looking upward, he could see sunlight and blue sky up above. The trail was wet and winding. Horses' hooves slipped a little as they progressed upward, but they made it to the top without much difficulty. The three riders emerged on top of the shale formation and found cover behind a stand of thick brush. They waited a few moments. The stillness of the day was soon broken by the sound of galloping hooves, and in a few minutes 3 riders came riding hard along the trail and passed by the onlookers from above. It was Kitty, Arapaho Brown, and Chief Henry Two Owls. They had left Jeremy, Frankie, and the others behind, with Willis Beatty as prisoner. They would all travel on to rendezvous at Kip Dalton's place that night as planned. Hopefully, once Kitty and the others had Cyclone back safe and sound, they would catch up with the others. Now they rode on at a feverish pace, completely unaware that they had passed by their quarry. "Darn fools didn't take my warning about waiting a while," Sam said. "Guess they don't care much about keeping you alive." "Guess not," Cyclone agreed. She didn't seem to understand that since they were coming for him, that they must care. Sam Bell just didn't think straight. "Come on, let's go. They'll be to hell and gone before they ever figure out they're heading the wrong way." She turned her horse and prodded Cyclone in the same direction. They rode off to the west. Kitty, Rap, and Chief had ridden another quarter-mile when they pulled their horses up to a halt. The pass had opened up into a wide open plain. Sparse foliage dotted the countryside, and the landscape was barren of grass. Hard rock and sand stretched out for miles. The land had been untouched by man for a long time. There was no sign of anyone having passed through recently. "No one's been through here recently," Chief said. "Even I can see that." For once, Rap was not about to tease Chief about his eyesight. "I know they came this way," Kitty said. "We couldn't have passed them, and they couldn't have doubled back. I didn't see any place for them to hide." "They have to be back there someplace," Chief said. "If there was a place to hide, we'll find it. Then we'll know they doubled back and we'll have to catch up. If we find there was a way off the trail, we'll have to follow it. It's going to take time, but that's all we can do." "What if we can't find them or catch up to them?" Rap asked. "Then we'll ride on to Thimble Creek as fast as we can and try to head them off before they get there." "I don't think they'll be going to Thimble Creek," Chief said. "Why not?" Kitty and Rap said with surprise, almost in unison. "She'll be taking him to Utah instead," Chief said. "Utah?" Kitty exclaimed. "Why? Is Grandpa worth more in Utah than the 10,000 that Price is offering? What's he wanted for that could be worth that much?" "I don't think that old warrant is any good anymore," Chief said. "Besides, it's not the money she's after." "What is it then?" Kitty asked. "She just wants your grandpa." "What for?" Chief could hardly stifle a chuckle, even in the seriousness of the moment. "She wants him for her husband." "What does her husband want him for?" Rap asked. "You don't understand," Chief said. "Her husband is dead. Cyclone shot him, some time back." "You mean this is all about revenge?" Kitty queried. "You don't get it either, do you?" Chief answered. "She wants your grandpa to be her husband." "Her husband?" Kitty exclaimed. Even she had to smirk at that. "That's why they would be headed to Utah," Chief continued. "Her husband was a Mormon. He had several wives. She figures that if they go to Utah, She can have more than one husband, just the same as her husband had more than one wives. But you said Grandpa killed her husband. That's right, but Sam's got a notion. Doesn't make sense, Kitty scoffed. Why? It doesn't make sense. Chief took a deep breath, then said with great deliberation, Because Samantha Bell is crazy, and we best be getting to the trail and find them fast before she gets any crazier notions. They wheeled their horses, kicking up a shower of dust around their horses' hooves, and headed back along the trail from whence they came. Looks like we'll be spending a few more nights on the trail again, Cy. Sam smiled at him. They had found a grassy area beneath the shade of a cottonwood tree near a narrow stream. Cyclone sat with his back to the tree, and Sam sat on her legs bent beneath her. She had taken off her broad-brimmed hat and tossed it on the grass beside her. Her hair was long, thin like wire, and unkempt. Her face was void of color, and her brown eyes looked tired. She had a cloth spread out on the ground between them. There was some biscuits, jerky, and slices of freshly cooked rabbit meat before them. Dub had shot a rabbit earlier, built a small fire, and cooked it. He was presently off to the stream to gather some water for coffee. The some had been camped for 3/4 of an hour for nooning. Sam seemed confident that they were not being trailed. As they had ridden along, Sam kept checking their back trail and saw no sign of pursuit. Once in a while, she had thought she had seen a puff of dust far off behind them. If they were being trailed, their pursuers were far, far behind them. Then, when the puffs no longer occurred, she had comforted herself that what she had seen were merely dust devils playing in the wind. Remember those nights, Cy? Sam said, wistfully, leaning back and tossing her head like a schoolgirl. The frazzled strands of hair hardly moved. Those were the nights that made us man and wife. Well, Sam, Cyclone said carefully, I don't rightfully remember no preacher man coming along that there trail. That don't matter none, Sam said. You and me alone, them nights on the trail. Same thing as marrying up. Dub was just climbing the bank with the water. And there's the proof of it, Cy. Ain't he just your spittin' image? Yeah, spittin', Cy agreed, watching the boy stumble and spill the bucket of water. Dub, his mother scolded, watch what you're doing. Now go get that bucket filled again. Dub grunted something unintelligible, picked up the bucket, and went back down the bank. Now, where were we? Sam said to herself to gather herself. Oh yes, the preacher thing. Now you know that really isn't important. Not after all these years, and we're going to be on the trail alone again for the next few nights. For sure, that should seal the deal. But we won't be alone, Cy reminded her. Dub's here. Oh, that don't matter. In case you haven't noticed, he isn't all there. You don't say? Cy said as if it was a revelation he hadn't considered. Then he smiled broadly. Sam smiled back, but Cyclone wasn't smiling at her. He was smiling past her over her shoulder. Chief Two Owls was there coming up behind her on silent moccasined feet. With one swift move, his right arm lashed out around Sam Bell's throat. Her eyes bulged with surprise and her breath was cut short. She tried to rise and Chief helped her by pulling her to her feet, still applying pressure. Sam Bell's eyes closed with the air suppression. She slumped in his arms and he let her fall to the ground. You didn't kill her, did you? Cy jumped to his feet with surprising agility for him. There was genuine concern on his face. No, Cy, I just put her to sleep for a while. Rapp was just now climbing the bank, carrying an unconscious Dub in his arms. Kitty came running out of the bushes into Cyclone's arms. Are you all right, Grandpa? Tears were running down her cheeks. Nothing to worry yourself about, Cyclone said, giving her a squeeze. Looking past her shoulders, he said to Rapp, You didn't hurt the boy none? He already knew the answer. Nah, just a little nap. Good, Cy said. Tie 'em both up. Not too hard. I wanted them to get themselves out of it. I just wanted to take long enough for us to get away from here. Chapter 16. It was long after dark by the time Kitty, Cyclone, Rap, and Chief arrived at Kip Dalton's place. Jeremy and the others had arrived earlier on time and uneventfully. The wagon load of counterfeit silver had been stored in Kip's barn as planned. The only stumbling block so far was what to do with Willis Beatty. Kip had held off revealing what, if anything, he may have learned in Thimble Creek until Kitty and the others returned. Everyone had gathered around him in the kitchen. It had become quite cramped with the addition of the 4 young men and the captive Beatty brother. First of all, I want to tell you that you can forget about those bounty hunters in town. I heard about what happened yesterday and how you fellows sent them packing back to town. I guess you put the fear of God, or should I say Wildcats, into them. They told Price to keep his bounty money. They packed up and hightailed it out of town as fast as they could ride. We could have handled them anyhow, Rap boasted. Maybe so, Rap, but it's just as well they're gone. One less thing we have to worry about? Maybe so, maybe no, Cyclone groused. Is that all you got to tell us? We pretty near already know that. Actually, Kip announced rather proudly, I did manage to learn quite a lot during my visit to town. Kitty waited with expectant apprehension. Her arms were crossed against her chest, and she glared at Kip Dalton with suspicion. And no, he said emphatically, addressing Kitty directly, I did not have to sleep with Miss Baxter to get that information. I got a room all to myself for a few days if the need occurred. Kitty tossed her head. Miss Baxter, she repeated with disgust. Fortunately, she merely needs to be plied with alcohol, Kip said, opening his arms in display, palms up. Just get on with it, Kitty urged with annoyance. It seems that Simon Price has done this scheme before, and he intends to do it again. The United States government is buying silver from Mexico. Once a month, a loaded freight wagon of silver bullion is delivered from the mines in Juarez, Mexico, to the border of Arizona. A cavalry detachment picks it up and escorts it most of the way across Arizona. They meet another detachment at a place called Twin Peaks Cutoff. This detachment escorts the shipment the rest of the way to the Denver Mint in Colorado. Price's mine in Colorado is played out. The one here is almost played out, but there is some silver still there. That's why Price brought his son back here to work it. It's not worth working, though, so what he's doing is plating what silver he has to the outside of lead bricks. We already know that, Sherlock, Kitty scoffed. Kip tried to ignore her and continued. Price's scheme is to replace the real silver shipment with the counterfeit silver. That's why he wanted the wagon back. I don't get it, Jeremy said. How does he do that? That's where it gets tricky, Kip said with a knowing smile. And I have to hand it to the sly devil. It is an ingenious scheme. Well, let's stop beating about the bush, son, Cyclone piped up impatiently. Get on with it. There's a lot of mountains close enough together that could look like they could be called Twin Peaks, aren't there? So what? Cyclone was really getting irritated. Kitty just waited skeptically. Price finds a place farther down the trail from Twin Peaks Cutoff, puts up a sign on another trail near some other mountains, and calls it Twin Peaks Cutoff. The cavalry detachment comes along and thinks they reach the transfer point. Price has his own men dressed in cavalry uniforms meet them. They do the transfer paperwork and receive the load of silver. The real cavalry turns around and goes home. And Price's men just take off with the silver then? Kitty said. That still doesn't explain what he wants with the counterfeit stuff. That's the genius of it, Kip said. Price's men have it with them hidden nearby when they pick up the real stuff. Once the cavalry is gone, they switch loads. They fill the army wagon with the fake stuff and drive away with the real stuff. Meanwhile, they continue on to the real Twin Peaks Cutoff as if they are the original cavalry detachment. They make the transfer, and the shipment goes off to the mint and isn't discovered until months or even years later when it is pulled out to be minted into coin. In the meantime, they never know they've been robbed. So I guess we ruined it for them by stealing that wagon load of fake silver, Rap chuckled. Fake silver? Willis Beatty exclaimed. You mean my brothers risked my life for nothing? Oh, it's worth something, Willis, Kitty said. Not much, but something. Certainly not as much as you are. Nice of you to say that, Kitty. But I guess I'm just not worth a plug nickel. And I'm sorry about those things I thought about you. It was just the things my brothers were saying, and then I saw you. With him. He nodded toward Kip. Kip was still in conversation with the others. No, Rap, I don't think we ruined it for them, but I do think we made it damned inconvenient for them. But if we got the wagon, Rap put in. They could always fix up another one, Kip said. That is, if they've got enough silver to make up another batch. My guess is they'll do their darndest to come up with it. The real shipment is worth $300,000, and the next one is due a week from Thursday. That's a week from yesterday. They're going to have to hustle if they are going to get another fake load ready. I doubt if that mine has much silver left in it. I didn't see much while we were working in the mine, Frankie said. With what's at stake, I'm sure Price will come up with enough silver to do the job somehow, even if he has to go elsewhere for it. I still don't see what we're going to do with that stuff we got and what we're going to do about Price's scheme, Cyclone said. Kip smiled broadly, like the cat that just swallowed the canary. I think we can beat the old devil at his own game, he announced proudly, standing tall and erect, throwing his broad shoulders back. His eyes met Kitty's with a twinkle. She seemed to relax and smiled back. Willis frowned and faded back into the crowd. We can do the same thing, Kip stated. Do what? Rap asked dumbly. Yeah? Do what? Cyclone repeated. Easy, Kip said. We just beat Price's men to the shipment transfer. And just how do we do that? Cyclone was skeptical. We get ourselves some cavalry uniforms. Then we find another place down the trail near different mountains, put up a sign saying Twin Peaks cut off. We meet the cavalry detachment, do the transfer, take the shipment, switch the real silver for our fake silver, take the fake silver on to Price's fake transfer point, and let them take our fake shipment. They'll think they've got the real stuff, and they'll send their fake stuff on to Denver. Who knows how long it will take Simon Price to figure out he's been duped. And he'll have no idea how it happened. All he'll know is he got fake silver. He won't know you got away with it, but I'll bet he'll blame you anyway. And there'll be nothing he can do about it. It won't work, Kitty said emphatically. Why not? Kip said. It's foolproof. For one thing, Kitty said, we don't have a full wagon load. Remember? Some of the cases were damaged. Some lost. We didn't recover all the bars. We'll empty some of the real silver cases, fill them with what we got. Fill some more with whatever, and seal them up. It'll look like a full load. Kitty mulled it over. She still wasn't convinced. Still won't work, she said. We can't waylay the cavalry? Why not? Kip was starting to get impatient with her. We don't look like cavalry. We will. I'll get uniforms. You can do that? Of course I can do that. I've got contacts at the fort. I've already thought of that. I'll get uniforms and McClellan saddles, just in case you were going to ask about that too. No, I wasn't, Kitty said meekly. What's a McClellan saddle? Never mind. Trust me. I'll take care of everything. Still won't work, Kitty said with a pout. Now what? Kip could no longer hide his irritation. They don't let girls in the cavalry, she said. You're not going to be in the cavalry. You're not meeting the real cavalry. You'll be hiding somewhere out of sight where they can't see you. Oh, I can see where that might work, Kitty said. Good, Kip said enthusiastically. I'm glad you finally agree. The others had been looking on, taking in the repartee with amusement. I guess she really had you going there, Kip, Cyclone laughed. Kip looked at Cyclone and was a bit taken back that the old man referred to him so casually by his first name. He was genuinely moved and humbled in a way he had never felt before. He laughed in return, only to be interrupted when Kitty said, "But it still won't work." Kip's laugh cut short and he took a deep sigh. "And why not, milady?" Somehow, milady didn't take on its usual affectionate connotation. "It may work transferring the real silver, because the real cavalry doesn't know us from anyone else, but transferring the fake silver to Price's men won't be that easy. Some of his men are bound to recognize some or all of us. They may even recognize you too, Kip," Kitty said, admittedly to herself. She had been playing a bit with Kip, but now she was dead serious. Her face was dark with concern. "You're absolutely right, Kitty," Kip said. His demeanor also changed to deep concern. He gazed deep into Kitty's eyes, and suddenly she wished they weren't here plotting dangerous games. If only they could be in a normal world of blue skies, green grass, and peaceful days. "I've given that a great deal of thought. We're going to need more men to help us with that leg of the heist. How about your young friends here?" "'Fraid not," Cyclone said. "You're forgetting it was Simon Price that put those boys in jail. His men will know them too." "Then we're just going to have to find some men someplace," Kip said. "I think I know how that can be arranged," Cyclone said with a wry smile, looking at Willis Beatty. "Looks mighty quiet down there," Jonas Beatty said. The three Beatty brothers were sitting on their horses on the ridge behind Kip's ranch house. That afternoon, after being driven off by Sam Bell, the three Beatty brothers had cautiously returned to the scene where they had left their guns. Luck was with them. There were no signs of the bounty hunter, Cyclone, or any of his companions. They found their guns where they had left them. Being sure that the wagon load of silver would eventually show up at the abandoned ranch house where they had followed the Wildcats to earlier, they headed back to check it out. Now, as they sat there on the ridge watching, they were quite sure that someone was in the ranch house. There were several horses in the corral that had not been there before. All was dark down below. There was no light showing through the windows, a good indicator that all had turned in for the night. There was no one moving around the outside property. Apparently, no one had seen any necessity to post a guard. The night sky was extremely dark for midnight. Cloud cover was heavy, and no moon or stars were visible, leaving only the blackness of night. As close as the brothers were to each other, they were only moving shapes with voices. "Of course it's quiet down there," Red said. "They've probably all gone to bed. Pipe down and be quiet your own self, or they might not be quiet much longer." "I wish we'd gone to bed," Kirby said. "It's getting cold out here." "Just keep thinking of that silver," Red said. "You'll have plenty of time for bed, and you'll be able to keep warm all the time when we get it." "You sure it's in the barn, Red?" Kirby asked. "Where else would it be? Of course it's in the barn." "How we gonna get it out?" "We'll just hitch up some horses and drive it off. We just gotta keep quiet," Red said. "What if there ain't no horses?" Kirby asked. "Of course there's horses. How do you think they got it here?" I dunno." "Comin'," Red said with irritation as he gigged his mount forward down the hill toward the barn. Once they negotiated the foot of the hill and entered the barnyard, Red motioned to the others to remain silent and dismount. All three of them led their horses silently across the yard, approaching the barn. Pulling his horse to the right out of the way of the right half of the big double-hung doors and motioning to Jonas and Kirby to do the same, Red reached for the crossbar that was cradled across both doors, latching it shut. He lifted it carefully, silently, and fastened it out of the way with a looped wire that was attached to it for that purpose. He signaled to his two brothers. They moved forward and put their fingers around the edge of the door. Red did the same with his door. In unison, they pulled the doors open silently and walked them back, opening them to the complete width of the opening. They stepped into the center of the open doorway. It was black as pitch inside. Red snapped a match, and in its glowing flame the three men saw before them the wagon they thought held their fortunes in silver. Sitting on the wagon were four young men with guns leveled at them. "Welcome, gentlemen," Frankie the Kid said. We've been waiting all night for you. Now maybe we can get some sleep." Chapter 17. "Just one more with you, Governor, and your wife," the photographer said. His two big upper front buck teeth protruded over his thick lower lip as he grinned wolfishly at the foursome standing in front of him in the flower garden behind the governor's mansion. The governor, dressed in his finest suit, his wife in an elegant lavender gown, daughter Barbara in pink with ruffles, holding a bouquet of white lilies, and Matt Starr, dressed in the best suit he had ever worn, and stiff, high white collar, had been posing for pictures for nearly 3/4 of an hour. Soon, these pictures would be in the papers, and the world would learn that Matt Starr, a lowly government employee, a mere lawman, would be marrying into the family of the governor of Arizona Territory. It was a picture-perfect afternoon in the garden. The sun was brilliant in a clear blue sky, with only wisps of filmy white streams of clouds. There was little breeze, and the elegantly coiffed hairstyles of the territory's first family ladies were barely disturbed. "How about one with you standing next to you, daughter, Governor?" the photographer said. "Mrs. Stanton, you stand on the end, next to your husband, and Marshall, you stay where you are on the end next to your lady." Stanton and his wife exchanged places. "Fine, fine," the photographer said as he scampered back around behind his camera mounted on a tripod. His two assistants stood back out of his way. The camera was an American optical Henry Clay stereoscopic camera model 1893. It was a folding dry plate camera with sliding drop bed design, so the entire weight of the camera would center over the tripod. It was normally carried in a square carrying case with a stiff handle. When opened, it would fold out into a bellows using a dry plate system. It was constructed of highly polished mahogany and brass trim with a leather bellow and was equipped with a Prosch triplex pneumatic release shutter. The photographer stepped back and stood erect as if finally relaxing. The foursome before the camera relaxed also, but with much more relief. "I have to get back to work," Governor Stanton said curtly, and hurried off. He had given a slight nod to his wife and daughter, but completely ignored Matt. "That's just his way," Mrs. Stanton said, turning to Matt. "Publicity is just something to get out of the way. Just another chore to him. You'll get used to him." "No offense taken," Matt said. "I've seen him working." "Good," she said. "Now if you'll excuse me. I have my duties to attend to also." "Of course," Matt said. "I'm sure you and Barbara can find things to occupy yourselves for a while." "I'm sure." Matt smiled. Barbara took his arm and giggled as her mother walked away. "Oh, I'm so happy, Matt," she said. Matt nodded with a slight smile. "Well, you might be a little more excited than that," Barbara said. "Oh, I am," Matt answered. "You don't sound it. Maybe men just don't show it in the same way that women do." "That's silly. Now tell me, is there something bothering you?" No, nothing. Nothing at all." "Is it Daddy? He can be quite intimidating at times," Barbara said. "If it is, you don't need to worry. As long as I want you, he'll go along with it. He lets me have anything I want." "No, I can deal with your father." "Then what is it? Don't you want to marry me?" Fear flushed over her face, and suddenly she was afraid she had asked the wrong question. He turned to her and grasped both arms. He stared deep into her eyes. He smiled softly. "Of course I want to marry you." He suddenly felt pangs of guilt that he had ever let her doubt him. "It's just," he started, "it's just this business about pictures in the papers." "For heaven's sakes, what about it?" It's just that, he stammered. "It's telling the whole world." "Of course it's telling the whole world. Isn't that what we want to do? I do. I'm thrilled. I want to shout it from the highest mountain." As realization set in, her face turned pale, and the corners of her mouth turned down. There was accusation in her eyes. "And you don't?" she said with deliberation. "What? Are you ashamed of it? Ashamed of marrying a governor's daughter? That doesn't make sense. Just no sense at all." "If you'll just calm down and listen to me," Matt pleaded. "That's not what I'm saying. If anyone is to be ashamed of anyone, it's you who should be ashamed of me. I'm nothing but a gunman. I never had $2 to rub together. I got nothing to offer you. You got everything. You're elegant, rich, cultured, and spoiled," she finished for him. She was settling down and her anger was disappearing. The softness and color was returning to her cheeks. The sun sparkled on a hint of a tear in her eye. "And spoiled," he agreed with a slight smile. "You fly off the handle and jump to conclusions too quick. Now, I don't know what's bothering me about this newspaper business. Maybe it's just too much notoriety than I can handle right now. It's probably just something I gotta get used to." "Well, get used to it, cowboy," she said, reaching her arms around his neck and drawing him close. "Because you're going to get a lot of it in this family." He responded and drew her close too. They were still in deep embrace when the photographer said, "Hold it, right there. This is a good one." Chapter 18. "You mean to tell me you were driving around with a wagon full of worthless crap?" Red Beatty fumed. He was sitting at the kitchen table, and Cyclone had tossed a tin plate of a meager breakfast of bacon and sourdough biscuits before him. Rap Brown had shoved him roughly through the front door and slammed him forcefully into the wooden chair that had been pulled out for him, next to the table. It was mid-morning before Rap had untied Red Beatty and brought him into the ranch house from the barn, where he had been kept captive with his 2 brothers for the night. He had been practically dragged across the barnyard as his circulation had hardly had time to return after being freed of his bonds. He could hardly stand on his feet on his own. Cyclone quickly apprised Red of his predicament and had explained to him about his folly of pursuing a wagon full of phony silver. "That's about the size of it," Cyclone chuckled, gazing down on his disheveled prisoner. You made a fool out of me," Red growled. "Nah," Cyclone shook his head. "Seems to me you beat me to it a long time ago." Red pursed his lips. "Now don't go getting all mad there, Red," Cyclone said. "After all, we's the ones who should be mad at you. You pretending to be our friends and all." "Oh, but Cy," Red said, trying to oil his tongue. "We are your friends, but the thought of all that silver just tempts a man. We just couldn't help ourselves. You'd have done the same thing." He forced a nervous smile, hoping Cyclone would buy it. "Well, you Red, I might just understand that, but Willis, you remember Willis, don't you? He's the little brother you left behind to take the blame for you." Red's fake smile disappeared. Willis stepped into the room where his brother could see him. Red swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed nervously. "You see, Willis here told us how you fellas followed us down here to collect Simon Price's bounty on us. How you tried to bushwhack us." "Now, Cy," Red said, "there was nothing personal in that. That was just business. Besides, didn't we give that up when we had the chance? Didn't we help you against those other bounty hunters?" "Sure," Cyclone said. "You were so big-hearted to help us against those other guys because you thought they'd beat you out of the reward money." "Now, Cy, you know that just ain't true. We had plenty of chances after that, and we didn't try anything." "That's because you saw bigger fish. A wagon load of silver worth 10 times what we was worth." "That's just not true." Red's shoulders were shaking violently now. "There's no need to lie about it, Red," Cyclone said evenly. "I'm not a vengeful man. I don't hold grudges." Red suddenly relaxed, gazing up at Cyclone. His trembling almost ceased. "But I do," Arapaho Brown growled, slapping a booted foot on the table edge close to Red Beatty's face. He had drawn his pistol, its long barrel pressed hard into Red's temple. Rap's big thumb eared the hammer back. It clicked into place with what seemed a deafening blast. Red dropped his head to his folded arms on the table in the middle of his plate of breakfast and sobbed like a baby, his shoulders shaking vehemently. Rapp lifted his pistol, smiled broadly, revealing his large teeth, and released the hammer slowly. "Just playing with you," he laughed and holstered his weapon. "Nice," he said, and walked away. Kitty and Kip were leaning on the corral fence, drinking coffee and taking in the morning coolness before the sun rose too high for the day. Dew was still on the grass, and the early morning sun still had that yellowy sheen emanating just above the distant mountain spires. They watched as Rapp Brown came out of the ranch house, went to the barn, and returned with Kirby and Jonas Beatty. "You think these guys will work out, Kitty?" Kip asked. There was a tone of doubt in his voice. "Grandpa thinks so," Kitty said. "So they probably will. The Beatties are more stupid than they are bad, and Grandpa will take advantage of that. As long as they think they're going to come away with some money in this deal, they'll cooperate. I just hope 4 men is all we'll need. Didn't you say that the original cavalry detachment is usually 6 men? A driver and 5 riders?" "Yes, but I think we can get by. I'll go as a 5th rider. That will make it look better. Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on the Beatties. But what if someone from Price's men recognizes you? We can't be sure that Peso Martin isn't in on it, which he probably is. I'll ride at a distance from the rest as an outrider, far enough that I can't be recognized but visible enough to be shown as a part of the force." "It will have to work," Kip said. "At any rate, you will already have the silver." "That's something else that bothers me," Kitty said with deep concern. "What's that?" "The silver. It belongs to the government. But if you didn't take it, Price would. You're not really stealing it from the government. You're stealing it from Price." "I guess that is one way to look at it," Kitty said. "Of course it is," Kip agreed. "But," Kitty said, "I don't want it all. I just need enough for my mother's care and for me and the others to get by for a while. That would be like a finder's fee, wouldn't it?" "I guess it would," Kip agreed again. "Of course, if you want the rest, you can have it," she said. "Kitty, Kitty, Kitty, I'm not doing this for the silver. That is, not unless it's what you want. I'm doing this for you. If you want to give back everything, but what you need, we'll do that. I don't want any of it. When this is over, we'll ship what is left to the Denver Mint where it belongs." "Oh, Kip," Kitty's face brightened. "You really mean that?" "Yes, Kitty," he said softly. "All I want to do is to make you happy." "Oh, Kip, I've been so mean to you, so distrustful. I'm so sorry." She turned to him. "That was fun," Kip smiled. "It makes the rest all the better." He pulled her to him. Their coffee cups dropped to the ground. Chapter 19. Fort Lowell was more than a full day's ride out of the way from the meeting point where they would be intercepting the cavalry detachment with the real silver. Kitty, Kip, Cyclone, and the others had spent a full day at Kip's place making plans for the next several days. They had gathered pieces of wood and constructed a makeshift road sign on which they painted the words Twin Peaks Cutoff. They rubbed it in the dirt to give it a bit of a weathered look and take the freshness of the new paint off. They tossed it along with a mallet for driving the post into the ground, into the wagon with the rest of the load, and had set off for Fort Lowell, where Kip would secure the necessary uniforms and supplies they would need to carry out their plan. Having acquired such a large gang, it was felt that it was not safe to stay around Kip's place while he went to the fort. Too much activity around the place for too long was bound to draw attention. Everyone saddled up and all rode on toward Fort Lowell together. They camped about 5 miles east of the fort, and the following morning, Kip rode off by himself, leading 2 unsaddled horses for the purposes of hauling the acquired equipment back. Kitty had wanted to go with him as the two had become inseparable during the last couple of days, much to Cyclone's unease. Kip had explained that his contact at the fort would not be as likely to cooperate if he brought someone else along. After all, if he were caught doing this, he could be court-martialed, or worse. Kitty understood, and after tender goodbyes while Cyclone looked on with much discomfort, Kip rode away. Kitty watched him go, waving until the outline of his shadow became only a dot and ultimately disappeared into the horizon. Cyclone walked away before Kitty turned around. He didn't want her to see him watching her. He spent the day avoiding her, not wanting to get into any discussion about Kip Dalton. Kitty did not come around either. She sort of moped around, sitting off by herself under the shade of a cottonwood tree. They had chosen a good place to camp. It was secluded with plenty of rock cover. There were several trees for shade and good grass for the horses to graze. There was a stream nearby, and they were far enough from the nearest trail that the likelihood of anyone happening upon them was unlikely. By late afternoon, Kip returned. Kitty was jubilant and ran to him, greeting him as he slid from the saddle and into her arms. Cyclone was lying on his back in the shade of a big oak tree, his big hat pulled low over his face. He pushed the brim up an inch and peeked out at Kip and Kitty. He sighed and groaned to himself. He pulled the hat brim back down over his eyes. They broke camp the next day, and with the uniforms and cavalry saddles stashed in the wagon with everything else. They set out to establish the place they would intercept the silver shipment. They traveled most of the day before they found a place close enough to the real Twin Peaks cutoff to be a believable alternative. There was a crossroad, and although it was somewhat in the distance, there were two mountains close enough that you could call them Twin Peaks, with a little stretch of the imagination. The trail was steep here, and the horses had to strain a bit to haul the wagon load to the top, where the crossroads spread out across a flat rim around the mountainside. The trail ahead continued to incline upward, but spiraled enough to even out the difficulty of travel a bit. The countryside then leveled out into a dry plain that eventually spread into endless desert. Here was where they would pound in the stake for the fake sign, but they would not do that until morning, just before the cavalry detachment was due. They did not want to take any chances of anyone coming by and seeing the sign prematurely. The area in the near vicinity was not good for camping. There was no water about, and grazing was sparse. There was, however, a lot of brush. It was ideal for hiding. They would be able to hide the wagon here while waiting for the cavalry. In the meantime, they could scout around for some place close for the night. Close enough to be back early enough and not miss the silver shipment in the morning. Fortunately, they found such a place not far along the crossroads trail. They prepared a good meal, went over the plan for the next day. Kip, Jeremy, and the 4 Beatty brothers would be wearing cavalry uniforms and be the receiving detachment. It was decided that since the Beattys were going to be doing the second round of the plan, they should do the first, so they would know exactly what was expected of them. Kip would act as the receiving officer this time to do the paperwork for the transfer. Kitty, Cyclone, Rap, and Chief would stay hidden with the wagon of phony silver until the transaction had been completed. Once the official cavalry detachment was satisfied their duty was done and had turned back, Kip and the others would hurriedly transfer the real silver and the fake the silver to the respective wagons. Kip would then copy over the details of the transfer papers to a fresh copy that he had acquired for use with the meeting with Price's phony cavalry. He and the Beatty brothers would travel on to that meeting. This time, Red would play the part of the transfer officer, as he was the only Beatty who could read and write. Kip would play the outrider to avoid recognition. Meanwhile, Kitty would secure her share of the silver that she wanted and the amount promised to the Beatty brothers for their assistance. Then she and the others would head back toward Thimble Creek to the railroad and ship the remainder to the Denver Mint where it belonged. The part about shipping the silver back to the Mint was not shared with the Beatty brothers. Once Kip and the Beattys were done with the transfer with Price's men, they would abandon their fake shipment and hurry back to catch up with Kitty and the others. The meal was finished. Utensils were cleaned and put away. The campfires were burned down low and kept concealed and in anticipation of a big day on the morrow. Everyone turned in for the night. The Beatties huddled together next to their own campfire. Red pulled his blanket up over his head, leaving just enough space for his face to peek out. He grinned through his grizzly beard and muttered low. "Dream good, boys," he said. "I'm still planning on getting all that silver. $300,000 sounds mighty good to me. Wooey, I'd say that's worth dying for." Chapter 20. As midnight approached, the night air took a sharp chill. Threads of clouds would